Hello, welcome everyone. Episode 7 of Give Freedom a Chance, the podcast from the Libertarian Party UK, where we try to make a way and start talking about things related to freedom and the enemies of freedom and how our world is changing. We thank you all for being here on your Saturday afternoon. We really hope that your 2026 has started in a particularly auspicious way and things are going well. Unfortunately, things for all of us freedom lovers and liberty-seeking individuals are not particularly good, which is why this Saturday we've decided to just have a conversation with some of the membership and some of the leading members of the Libertarian Party UK about several subjects that are quite problematic and that could threaten our freedoms in the coming days. I'm Luca Bocci, your host. I've been a journalist since 1990, and I'm a member of the Libertarian Party UK. And obviously, we will talk about several subjects from the digital ID, or how the U-turn of the Labour government may not be exactly a U-turn, the defection of Robert Jenrick from the Conservative Party to Reform UK, and how it's threatening because Suella Braverman might be next. So it's kind of like shaking down the whole British politics, and obviously this could give opportunity to other parties, including the Libertarian Party UK, to gain some foothold in regular politics, but also, again, what is happening around the world. So the massacre in Iran, where the revolution that is trying to take down the murderous regime of the ayatollahs has been stalled exactly. We don't know if the US is going to intervene or not. And what is going on in Venezuela, where after the capture of dictator Nicolas Maduro, things are proceeding in quite a complicated way. So obviously, I can't just be standing here looking at my old camera. So I need the rest of the crew, and let me introduce them all. And so here we are. Again, everyone, thanks all for just being here. We've seen the president of the Libertarian Party UK, Andrew Withers, is having some issues with the camera, and not a problem. So we're having, obviously, Martin Day, and hi, Martin, is the coordinator for Mercia. Hi, Martin.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Not too shabby at all. And obviously we're having Owen Ashworth, a member of the Libertarian Party, one of the youngest members of the Libertarian Party UK. Hi, Owen. How are things in your neck of the woods?
Hi, guys. Yeah, they're all fine over here. There's lots of juicy topics to get into, so let's get going.
Absolutely. I'm seeing. So, Andrew, I don't know. You're having some issues with the camera, I'm assuming. So we'll circle back to you. So, gentlemen, I'm not sure exactly. As you said, we have quite a busy lineup of things to discuss, and I'm not really sure where we should start, because apparently the big news that I had these days, aside from what happened yesterday with Robert Jenrick defecting and Kimi Badenoch having this announcement, this Zoom call that was rather shabby and not particularly good looking. You would expect a party such as the Conservative Party to have, some better, some better people regarding the communication of something that important. But I think probably the whole digital ID fiasco is probably one of the things that actually has stricken me recently, because apparently everyone is saying, "Oh, great! So Labour has decided they're not going to go through with the whole digital ID thing," and I'm not really sure. Is this really the case? Can we really trust the Labour government in this? So, who wants to start first? I'm seeing Andrew as having some issues again. You want to start, Martin?
Yes, the supposed rollback on digital ID, I don't see it as a rollback at all. I see it as readjusting their tactics. They've had a horrible public reaction to their plans. Their excuses that it would help with the migrant situation, in that it would stop them working, has been laughed out of town. There doesn't seem to be any reduction in the amount of money they're planning to spend. They're still setting it up, albeit on a supposedly voluntary basis. But we can see that pressures will be exerted in the same way that the COVID vaccine was pushed. You couldn't travel without it, for instance. And I see this happening exactly the same with digital ID. And it's a very dangerous situation if you're at all interested in freedom.
I think that right now is really the thing is saying it's not a matter of how. So rather than going directly through the legislative way, which would be the proper way of saying, so let's have Westminster come up with a draft, with a law that just instates that, they're trying to go the sneaky way. So we'll just say, no, we're not having a bill that states that everybody has to have a digital ID, but we'll make your life so miserable that you will be forced to do it, which is pretty much the way they did with the COVID thing. So I don't know, Owen, you think it's, what will they target first? I've heard that they would go there and say, if you want to have employment, you would need to have a digital ID. Because I don't really think that people bought the whole idea that digital ID was fundamental to just bring down the problem of immigration, because that looked, to me personally, looked like completely ludicrous. Just say, oh, we need digital ID to stop the boats from coming, which, I don't know, it's nonsense. What is your take?
Yeah, I think most people saw the nonsense that it was. People were never going to buy into that, I don't think, because this is the party that's never been particularly anti-immigration, and suddenly when it comes to one of the most divisive, policies, they're saying, oh, well, actually, we could use this to deal with immigration. I don't think anyone was ever going to buy that, but the current strategy that they're going after is obviously quite a popular playbook when it comes to the state. What governments do is they test the waters with a policy when they know that they aren't particularly close to an election that's on a policy that's particularly divisive, like digital ID. They obviously get the waters, get the massive pushback that they have justifiably got. But then what they do is they water it down and then put it in through the back door. And the interesting thing is that before the Labour government tried to bring in digital ID, if you looked at polling, there was actually more people for it than against it. So once it was brought up, it flipped completely in the opposite direction. So I think when it comes to digital ID more generally being used in a perhaps less, let's say, in-your-face sense, people aren't too likely to kick up a fuss about it. And I think that's the strategy here, is that they'll say, okay, you need this form of digital ID to start a job, to claim a pension, to travel, all these sort of things that are very key to people living their lives. I mean, what can be more key than having an ID to, basically start a job? I don't think it gets more close to home than that, really. And I think they'll use that to bring it in through the back door and make it mandatory, if not in name only.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the thing, because back when there was this whole COVID thing, us liberty individuals, people that take our freedom very seriously, we were saying that, hold on, guys, this is just a test run. They're trying really hard to just see how far they can push the people, and then the moment they get some actual resistance, they go there and say, oh, okay, we went too far, so now we're pushing back. But I think the direction of travel is that one, and it's been that one since the time of Tony Blair. Because let's remember that the whole point of digital ID and stuff was introduced by Tony Blair, but he wasn't able to do that because one of the tenets of British politics is that the British people is allergic to any kind of personal identification because it seems like a tyrannical imposition, which it kind of is. But so will they go back to the thing? Because I'm seeing these days that Starmer is trying to always push for the maximalist solution, going straight ahead at the problem, and then when he gets some resistance, he just comes back and then diverts and stuff. So I don't know, guys. It's just my impression, or is something that we can expect also in this case?
Well, it's very reactionary, isn't he? I think he tends to throw out policy. It's not just him; it's all of his members of his government. They throw out policies and then pull back on it. We saw this a lot with the recent budget. Rachel Reeves would throw out a bunch of ideas about certain taxes that she might bring in, certain taxes that she might increase or decrease, certain spending measures she was going to take, certain areas that she was going to cut. And then she'd pull back on it once she got the feeling of the public's opinion, and then just sort of mold her entire policy around public opinion. And it's incredibly, it doesn't bode well for actually creating good policy in the long run, because if every time you get a little bit of pushback on sensible stuff and you just roll back and, show your back, then you're not going to get anything done. We saw it with cuts to the winter fuel payment. Obviously, we think that's a fairly sound policy. We need to decrease spending in areas that are fair enough to decrease. There shouldn't be winter fuel payments going to pensioners that don't need it. But she saw one bit of pushback from the public opinion and then decided to roll back on it. And obviously that's not good for the long run.
Yeah, I know. The whole point of means testing, I think it's really, really important, because it could also be important in the case of the triple lock for the pension system and everything. Because nowadays we're seeing that nobody wants to touch the issue, because apparently pensioners are the only people that consistently vote. And so they say, no, we can't touch that. But then, obviously, if you look into the numbers are horrendous. And so this kind of reactionary policies from the government means that they actually have no principles. So the thing that we as libertarians have been saying since forever, they say that don't listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. And if they know what they're talking about, most of the times they're lying to you because they have different motives. So nowadays, it just seems to me that they are completely devoid of their direction or anything. So other than Miliband doubling down on the whole net zero nonsense and just more money nowadays, carbon capture and other things, aside from spending more of the money that isn't really there. Bank of England has to keep printing pounds from thin air, so they don't really have a policy. So I don't know, how can we honestly just take them seriously? I don't know, Martin, what is that?
I think we have to look at an interview Keir Starmer was in a little while ago, where he was asked which he preferred between Westminster and Davos, and he answered straight, Davos. So his principles are in alignment with the World Economic Forum. They do want to head towards the digital world, but I'm not sure we're ready for it. Apart from the intrusion into privacy, it's been tried in Estonia particularly, and it's been very unsuccessful. There have been numerous hacking incidences, and people's data are getting into the public domain. So there will be a huge pushback on that. But as far as his policies are concerned, he seems to be almost governing by opinion polls. He throw out some unsubstantiated rubbish, and then if the pushback is severe, row it back. If there isn't a pushback, they know they can get away with it at this time. But yeah, they will continue trying. It's not gone away, and it's very worrying.
Yeah, finally we managed to get Andrew Withers, president of or chairman. I don't know, president or chairman, Andrew.
Chairman, but I'm open to being president.
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. I'm not sure Alex would agree with that, but anyway.
I was only saying to Alex this morning, I'd like to be sacked from the Libertarian Party. He went, yeah, all right then, and Nigel wouldn't have me.
Oh, damn. Strange. It seems to be very keen on getting everyone on board, even people that maybe probably shouldn't be in reform. I don't know, Andrew, we were really talking about the fact of this digital ID, this push for digital ID that has been a momentary setback. But the direction of travel seems to be that one of a completely digital world, social credit score, just like in China. And this is not really new, because I seem to remember a few years ago that in the Davos folks, the WEF folks, they were saying China is showing us the way. This is the way forward. We want to have population completely under control. They are unable to do anything if we don't want to. So that if you're eating way too much bacon, or if you're traveling once too much, you won't be able to get money from your ATM, or I don't know. So do you think that this is a real setback, or actually they're just playing games and playing politics as usual?
I tend not to rely on any media reporting, especially from British media. I have not watched anything on the BBC for too many years now. I did speak to a friend of mine, a long-term friend of mine who lives in Sweden. Amazingly enough, we were talking about Iran. He was the son of the last education minister under the Shah, and they obviously, as a family, fled. He said that in Sweden, never mind China, in Sweden, which is part of the EU, they've had digital ID for 20 years. He cited a friend of his, David, who actually lives in Spain. He was defrauded by $250,000 was lifted out of his bank account. His bank, instead of investigating, just switched off his digital ID. He couldn't go to the supermarket. He couldn't do anything. He couldn't access medical services. And my friend in Sweden was supporting that family for a year while the state slowly went through the whole thing and found out whether he was telling the truth. He then had an illegal immigrant as a cleaner. He thought she got false documents. He thought it was legal, and she wasn't. But she also had the misfortune of this is in Spain, by the way. So I'm just telling you that this is once it's introduced in Britain, it applies across the whole of the EU and the whole of Europe. He employed an illegal immigrant from North Africa for his house in Barcelona. She very rarely turned up for work, so he sacked her. She went running off to the police, and the police hauled him in for a 2-hour interview, because even though his digital ID had been reinstated after a year, it flagged up he was a potential financial criminal. So literally, once you introduce this, your life is no longer your own. You're at the hands of somebody in an office in Barcelona, in Madrid, in Brussels, in Stockholm, who can just press a button and turn you off. So that is a practical demonstration that this is authoritarian state control a la 1984.
Yeah, I think I seem to remember that was the... I don't know if it happened to you, especially to me and Mark. It happens all the time. They're saying they're really pushing to get smart meters installed everywhere. Really pushing it. And every single time, every couple of weeks, they go there and they say, well, your smart meter isn't working. But so we don't have a smart meter. Oh, so you want one? No, not really. We're not particularly interested in getting a smart meter. And then you remember what happened in Greece. When there was the whole turmoil and stuff, and people were unable to get their money from the bank and everything, they went there and said, well, people are not paying their taxes, because they said, well, services are completely short, the country's in ruin, I'm not paying taxes anymore. And so they were saying, okay, fine, we will disconnect your electricity, because if you don't have electricity, you don't have a life. You don't have Wi-Fi, you cannot work remotely, no electricity, nothing. But when they were sending people, engineers, to the house to disconnect the electricity, you will have people from the neighborhood going there and saying, you're not doing that. They would need to have police. If you have a smart meter, you just press one button and it's gone. So this is kind of the direction of travel. They say, oh, you're exaggerating and stuff, but not really. This is reality in China. This is reality everywhere else.
It's reality in the EU. All that has happened so far is the only thing they've rolled back on. And from what I understand now, for any children that are being born now, they will automatically be given a digital ID. Mainly 2-month-old babies don't tend to protest, although my grandson might, is a bit of a handful. But literally, this is probably one of the worst authoritarian measures that has ever been brought in. It's like something out of a 1970s horror film about a dystopian future. And it's on our doorstep. And what I do not understand, and here's a gripe at our viewing public, we have gone from 12,000 to 16,000 people who follow our daily Facebook postings and on X, which again, you know, Starmer doesn't like being portrayed in a bikini, so he wants to pull the plug under that. So literally, this authoritarian government will be replicated by the next government, whoever it is, because literally we've had 2 people warn what the real problem is in our country. Is Steve Hilton was one who was booted out by the civil service when he was advisor to Cameron. And then we had Dominic Cummings, equally booted out. They're saying things that are absolutely true. Parliament is an irrelevance. It is farming out to unelected, unaccountable quangos, which since they came in, I think the figure was 480 quangos. Since Starmer's been in power, it's now over 612. They're completely unaccountable. They believe that they can make the law. You need to read Steve Hilton's book on his time in Downing Street. And at the end of the day, I had a party member, what was possessing him to do this at 3 o'clock this morning, actually saying to me, the problem is that, you know, all of these shenanigans that are actually going on about, oh, he's leaving this party and he's leaving that party, and the media focusing on that. The people who are running the country, which is the permanent civil service, must have been laughing up their socks, because at the end of the day, all this is a soap opera. It has got no bearing on the real application of power in the United Kingdom. The permanent civil service is growing exponentially, and they're the ones that want to introduce this. And it's, you know, the civil service will always play the long game, because they're going to be there, whoever's in power in the next parliament. They're the ones that want this. They want to conform to the EU. There's too many of them that actually go trotting off to the, the World NWO, the World Forum or whatever. They're all in this together. And you sound like a conspiracy theorist. But even though when the head of the of that organization is actually kicked out for fraud, these are the sort of people you're dealing with. I'm going to shut up now because I'm on my soapbox yet again. So I'm handing back to you, Luca.
No, come on. It's always good. And then making fun of Klaus Schwab is always fun. It's definitely fun. Because, I don't know, there seems to be a tendency of people that dress like Star Wars villain to actually be quite nefarious, because Klaus Schwab was a pantomime. But actually, Alexandre de Moraes, the president of the Supreme Court of Brazil, loves to wear the things like his Darth Vader. And actually, it's quite pernicious because it's putting people in jail.
You haven't seen what I wear after dark.
Oh boy. Let's not get into that. Everyone is on. So I'm thinking, the whole point of the permanent, the Secretariat Club, the Chatterati and stuff, they kind of have a symbiotic relationship with this, what in America is called the deep state. So the civil servant, the quangocracy and stuff like that. So they are the one running the show. And as Liz Truss was saying. He said, I got to 10 Downing Street thinking I could change things. And then I realized, actually, I wasn't in power. I wasn't allowed to do anything. And the things were progressing. They were going on autopilot. They're just going ahead and saying, this is the direction of travel. Don't disturb the drivers. This is it. So now, how can actually the people come with a way to just make their voices heard and kind of resist that? Because I don't think Robert Jenrick leaving the Conservative Party as even if he was the shadow Secretary of Justice and stuff, it was a front bencher, but shadow government actually doesn't really do anything. It's just kind of like a ceremonial position and stuff. Going to reform, I don't really know how that changes anything. Suella Braverman, I've read today that she might be jumping ship too. So this is just a pantomime. There is some substance behind it. Is this a takeover? Because nowadays I'm thinking more and more Tories are going into reform. So is reform that different from the Conservative Party?
No, it's Conservative Party 2.0.
Okay.
And the more people that he brings in from a failed government of 14 years that have... the bit that actually terrified me when I was watching a news report, when I should have been writing my contribution to a book, was the fact that, and I'm not a scientist, I'm an economic historian. That's what I did my degrees in. And what really frightened me was a news report, and I'm not a chemist and the rest of it. We've got Starmer threatening war, and it turns out for the last 2 years, we have had no ability to produce on a domestic basis ammonia. Ammonia is the base chemical for explosives and also for fertilizer. And the reason that has been shut down in the UK, we don't produce any homegrown explosives anymore. And I'm not even going to tell you where we're actually buying from, because it's actually horrific that this is actually happening. But at the end of the day, don't go around threatening wars if all you've got in terms of military capabilities throwing rocks at people. Literally, it's beyond decline now. It's actually in deindustrialization, and we've been rendered defenseless. We import the base chemical to make explosives to defend the country. I'm not a chemist. I just sat there with my mouth open. I hadn't known that this was going on. And yet Starmer's still strutting up and down, saying, yes, we're going to stop this and we're going to stop that and we're going to take on the Russians. As I said, what are we going to do? Throw rocks at them?
Oh, yeah. I think this is the difference that we've been having between the whole warmongering and posturing and saber rattling that going on in Europe, UK included, and the difference with America. I've read a while ago that America actually is taking things very seriously because they are upgrading the national arsenals. They're bringing back the production of the fundamentals to build explosives. They are upgrading the capabilities. They're upgrading the logistics and stuff. So they are very slowly, but they're gearing up to actually be able to face any kind of potential threat. Europe, I think only Poland has been doing that. Poland, because obviously they're quite near. They look east and they say, there is some guys that might be coming my way, so let's actually start producing munitions, start producing the explosives and stuff. No one else is thinking about that. They're all squabbling about, we need to just have some Euro bonds to finance the whole thing, so to get people more in debt. But no one is actually taking things seriously. And the same thing happens with the UK army, the British army, and saying, we don't have any more tanks. We don't have any kind of fighting people. And the Royal Navy is keeping the two carriers that have been built at significant cost for the taxpayer. They're pretty much in harbor. They're in Portsmouth or somewhere. And they cannot move them because they cost too much money to run. And
to be quite honest, Luca, don't get me started on those aircraft carriers. I wrote, along with Godfrey Bloom, who was a former MEP for UKIP, we wrote the party policy. We were advocating 10 years ago, do not waste money on aircraft carriers, because we have now proved in the Ukrainian war that one single sea skimming drone can send one of these £3 billion ships to the bottom of the sea with 2,000 crew in minutes. They are a colossal waste of money. Aircraft carriers stopped being a strategic asset at the Battle of Midway in 1942, nearly 100 years ago. They are just, and I'm going to say this, and I'm often criticizing it, they're just a rear admiral's wet dream. They do not add anything to the defence of the United Kingdom. It is £6 billion just up the wall. It's, literally, we've now got an army that is a quarter of the size of the police force. And literally, somebody, an ex-serving member of the forces, who's a party member, he sends me about 50 links a day about, oh my God, look at this. And the latest one is that at Catterick base, I think it's number 32 Royal Engineers company, all of them, every last one of them has actually been found to have failed a test for cocaine. And the Ministry of Defence, under our glorious leader, Starmer, has decided that we can't afford to discipline them or let them go or sack them, as is their contract, for not taking drugs, because manpower is so low and these people have been so expensively trained as Royal Engineers that they're going to gloss over the fact they've broke their contract by taking drugs. This was the state of the US Army in Vietnam back in the 60s. The poor guys out there, the grunts, were out there and they were just smoking pot or anything else they can shove up their nose. We as a Libertarian Party, and I distinctly remember this, and this was 10 years ago at our London conference, we managed to persuade hard-nosed libertarians that literally we had to adopt the Swiss form of defense. That was every man and woman was capable of doing military service, and the Swiss love going in. So it's a 2-week holiday every year and they get paid for it. But the Swiss, unlike the British, can actually put 1 million men into the field against an invader, fully armed, fully equipped, fully trained in 48 hours. We can't even stop 40,000 immigrants landing on the beaches. We just can't do it. We have not got the capability, but we have got 2 aircraft carriers floating around the China Sea, floating around the Gulf of Iran, just waiting to be sunk by a sea-skimming Silkworm missile made in China. I wonder what the hell is going on in Whitehall, and this is why I'm now a very angry old man, because I've been going on about this for nearly 25 years.
Yeah, I know the Admiralty. Well,
this chap below here, he's going to have to deal with this, not me.
Yeah, the Admiralty seems to be stuck in their ways, because they would go there and say, aircraft carriers are fundamental because they are the perfect way to project power worldwide and everything. So they tend to forget.
What does that mean?
It would mean in geopolitical terms, it would mean that if you do something that goes against the interest of the United Kingdom, we are going to send a carrier battle group and smack some sense into you. I'm going to
stop you right there, Luca.
Yeah.
We can't afford to put aircraft on them. We cannot afford to have pilots on these aircraft carriers. So those aircraft are largely American built, are largely crewed by Americans. And if we decide, like we did in Suez, we're going to take back the Suez Canal and the Americans object to it, all that will happen is the Pentagon will tell all of those pilots and all those aircraft, get off that ship.
Yeah, well, not really. The point is that a lot of people are saying that F-35 is actually the fighter jet that is able to run on the aircraft carriers, not only of the UK but pretty much of all the Western powers and stuff. They say, well, if you do something that doesn't agree with the US policy, they might as well turn them off. Or in the heat of battle, you might find out that the missiles don't shoot, that plane decides to turn back. So that is the problem of actually buying stuff made in other countries. I think that one of our viewers, obviously the chat is very lively today. We thank you all for all your questions and stuff. They were saying, well, Africa carrier could be viable in the future because they will be turned into drone carriers. So you will not have manned fighters jets, but you will have drones that actually attack in swarms, that are able to destroy completely the defenses of the other country. Yeah, it's a possibility. It's being tested and tried by some countries. It's not really a thing. It could be in 20 years, but not now. So we have taken a tangent and go into a military direction. Obviously, I love that because I have a master's in geopolitics, so it's right down my alley. But I don't know the audience will be so interested in that. So at this moment, I was thinking that one of the other things that we're seeing these days is that there is a fundamental disconnect between what is important for the British people and what actually is talked about in the media class, the commentariat, and especially what has been discussed in Westminster. So I'm pretty sure, I don't have a proof of that, but if I went into any English or Scottish or Welsh town and I talked to people at the pub, provided they're still open because they're closing down left and right, if I talk to them and I say, what is the major issue that you have? You would say cost of living. Or you would go there and say, well, I don't know, everything is closing, or I don't know, murders and, rapes and stuff. So these are the kind of things that worry people. If you look at the media, or if you hear what is being discussed in Westminster, it's completely different. They're talking about other stuff. They're talking about Greenland. They're sending 2 British soldiers in Greenland to do God only knows what. And they're playing geopolitics. They're threatening Russia. I don't know. And they're very silent about what is happening in Tehran. But that is another subject. So I don't know. Is there any way for regular people to make their voices heard? Because I don't know. It seems to be really taken from a dystopian novel. Say, they just don't care. Or am I missing something?
I think they do. It's just that all that has happened is what Mandelson called, he was quoting I can't remember his name, he wrote a book about the post-democratic age, is where all the institutions like Parliament and all the other institutions, the monarchy and everything else, all those remain, but they're all hollowed out. Now, what has been happening, and I take great comfort from it as an old man, is the fact that people are taking to the streets. It's the good old-fashioned way of what my history lecturer called at university years ago. He actually said it's negotiation by riot. It is a good English way of actually going on. If you don't like something, you just go take to the streets. That is what the state is terrified of, absolutely terrified of. When Whitehall is blocked with massive tractors, when you've got the likes of Tommy Robinson, not my cup of tea, but he can attract thousands. And then there's arguments over, oh, well, it was only 200 people and 300 people or 1,000 people or 500,000 people. That is what the state is frightened of. It's what my history lecturer at university actually called negotiation by riot. Going back to, I'm sorry, I'm wearing my historian's hat. In 1918, the British state was terrified of a Soviet-style uprising like it happened in Russia and was happening in Germany after the collapse of the German state under the Kaiser. Is literally there were battleships in the Mersey, there were battleships in the Clyde, and by some accounts, that some of these battleships opened fired on the Liverpool Soviet that was declared and the Glasgow Soviet. You try and find that in any history book. That is what they're terrified of. That is what the blob, as Dominic Cummins calls them, that is where they're terrified of. The only reason that there's been a rollback on the inheritance tax for farmers is because of mass demonstrations. The only reason that people are now rising up and demonstrating in the streets about digital ID, and they've rolled back on that because the last thing that they want, and sadly the Libertarian Party was getting itself all geared up to actually join the big protest in April. I think we ought to still go ahead with that, but I don't think there'll be as many people across all sorts of organisations, left and right, are opposed to this. Taking to the streets is going to be the only way, as mass demonstrations. And if people cannot get themselves out of bed on a Saturday, they deserve the government that they get, because Parliament is a failed institution.
Yeah, I think nowadays the whole point is that I don't think it's particularly in line with the British ethos. Obviously, I'm not British myself, but I lived more than 10 years, and I know you don't say. I've lost my accent a bit, so that you can tell. But I've lived in the UK long enough to come to realize that it's not really the proper way of doing things. The British way of doing things is, organizing as a grassroots level. You go there, you put pressure on your MP. Your MP brings the subject back to Westminster. Westminster discusses it and stuff. So the system is completely broken down. And I think it's broken down also because you have people like the Conservative Party or the Labour Party. They are disregarding the feelings of the local base. So the constituency used to say, we want our guy, because our guy is the one that knows the problems in our area, is the one that is able to represent them properly in Westminster, and then we want him. But then CCHQ and the Labour, they just decided, no, we'll have our guy because he's faithful of our dear leader, and so we'll have him, parachute him into our constituency and let him go to Westminster. So do you think that it's possible to just break this system by just giving more importance to the constituency? So just have a grassroots thing, because I've seen that it's probably the foundation of the change in the Republican Party in the US is the fact that the grassroots level are really important, and they are able to primary the establishment candidates and stuff. Do you think it's still possible to reform this system, or the political system will just collapse and break down? What is your experience?
I would say that representative democracy is dead. What we have now, or what we've had for the last 40 years, for as long as I've been alive, and probably more, is a form of tribalism. We've got the blue in one corner and we've got the red in another corner. The only thing that gives me hope, if there's any at all, is the fact that we are now coming to the end of the two-party system, and we are entering an age where there are 5 different parties. Whether they then unite between left or right, or whether they keep their individual identity, I don't know. But it's certainly, the more options there are, the more likely that local people will be able to get a representative that actually represents them.
Yeah, I think it's that the point is it. So you're thinking in terms of saying the system is so broken that it's possible to just go first past the post and just go into the holy grail of all non-mainstream parties, that is proportional representation, with maybe some mechanism to just say, I don't know, if you're below 5%, you don't get into parliament and stuff. So is this possible, or will we continue to see a complete breakdown? Because nowadays they're saying politics is not important, people don't care about politics. But then again, as I think Plato or Aristotle used to say, they say, if you don't care about politics, you are condemned to be ruled by your inferiors. And so I think this is
the better quote is, just because you have no interest in politics does not mean that politics will not take an interest you. bracket and your wallet. That was Pericles. That was over 2,500 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the the proportional past the post. I don't think it's proportional past the post. What does it mean? I'm not sure, because if it's a proportional representation, it means that you don't have a local constituency. You just have it depends. It's done differently in many different countries, but I don't know. This is a technical issue. I'm not
the
really sure.
Libertarian Party for the last 10 years has adopted. I was attending a constitution meeting with members this morning, discussing through a written constitution for the United Kingdom that actually protects freedom of speech. We're not really adopting the American one. Jefferson is one of my big heroes for what he achieved, but we are more in tune with adopting the system that they have in Switzerland. Is that the United Kingdom is anything but. It is made up of at least 3 different judicial systems, one in Northern Ireland, one in Scotland, and one in England and Wales. It's not a United Kingdom by any stretch of of imagination. We decided a long time ago that we were going to split down the country as it was 1,000 years ago, and that is where people still identify with, is the southwest being the old kingdom of Wessex, and then there's Mercia, which is largely the Midlands, although Martin and I are constantly at war about turning out the Field to actually seize Gloucestershire. But that's me and Martin having a bit of a Ukrainian battle. Northumbrians are very proud of their traditions, and the North, the Welsh obviously are very proud of their traditions. Scotland definitely is, to the point that there's a Scottish nationalist government. Or if you actually think about when the SNP was founded, it was in the early 30s, and I'm not making any. Socialism and nationalism has always left a bad taste and caused a lot of deaths across across Europe over the last 80 odd years. So I'm not a great fan, but we need to recognise, and that is the reason why we wanted to adopt the Swiss cantonal system, is that where you can have pride in your locality. And literally in Switzerland, each canton can set its own tax rates. If you want to live in socialist Northumbria, you vote for 80% taxes, but it means that Wessex is not impacted by it. London and the southeast are not impacted by it. And it's a better, more accountable system, and actually just breaking power away from Whitehall and Westminster, because the more you have concentration of power, and as we've seen with Mr. Trump, the more you have power concentrated in one person or one group of people, the more authoritarian it actually gets. It's a sad fact that after the fall of the Republic in England in 1660, we could have actually been following the Netherlands and Switzerland into becoming republics, but we didn't. So at the end of the day, we are where we are. And literally, I think we've got to accept, and unfortunately, I don't think that it's not so much Westminster as Whitehall still believes it's an imperial power and can influence this and influence that. And then we've got dear Mr. Lamy giving away bits of the old empire, like the Chagos Islands, irrespective of the wishes of the Chagosians. We need to really respect the worldview that people have of us, is that we're no longer an imperial power. We're not part of being an international policeman. The focus on the Middle East, I keep telling people, well, you ought to be interested, you ought to be siding with the Palestinians, you ought to be siding with the Israelis. I said, as an Englishman, I've lost interest in what went on there since 1948, when we evacuated our forces because we couldn't stand between two hostile elements, which are still carried on. It's nothing to do with us. We need to draw a line around ourselves. I'm pleased that we've signed an agreement with Norway as part of a putative Northern Alliance. because I actually see that NATO is going to disintegrate if the Americans don't take part and cut their funding back. At the end of the day, we're in a hell of a mess. And unless we do get a written constitution, we're one of, I think it's 5 or 6 countries that does not have a written constitution that protects our individual rights because of the mess we're in. One of those 5 is actually Saudi Arabia. It's not a great look when you're actually saying that you're a, as Martin was saying, a parliamentary representative democracy represents nobody other than the 600 people in the House of Commons.
Yeah, and the civil servants and the quangocracy and everyone and the commentariat and Westminster bubble, as they call it. So I think it's obviously, it would be really interesting to just go back to this kind of regionalism, because one of the things that us foreigners don't realize is that the United Kingdom, actually, you're right, it's very disunited. You just put together someone from Belfast and someone from, I don't know, Port Vale. That's obvious. You just go there and say, no, they're not the same. They're not the same people. But in terms of saying, so this obviously is being completely disregarded by the Labour government, which decided apparently that having people decide what the local council is going to look like is irrelevant, because they're about to decide that another 4 million English voters, mainly English, they're not going to be able to decide that in May. So I was thinking in terms of saying, I drew a parallel on X and saying Nicolas Maduro didn't care about the result of the election. He lost the election and he just said, I'm in charge, what are you going to do about it? And kept on dictating his wishes on the rest of the country. Keir Starmer has gone one step further. He said, well, I don't care. If I don't have an election, I can't lose an election. If I don't lose an election, I will not be kicked out of 10 Downing Street. So honestly, I'm just thinking in terms of saying, do they want to have the car crash? Do they want to wreck the machine? Or are they so callous and stuff that they are making a cold calculation and saying, if I deny people the right to an election at the local level, I will pass the idea that elections are not, written in stone. And so maybe next time there is a general election, I might well say there is an emergency. We will not have a general election, just like that. I don't know. What is your take? Am I missing something?
No, you're exactly correct. The definition of a tyrant in my younger days used to be somebody who went around cancelling elections and not sticking to when an election was due to and accepting the result of that election. We've actually seen all the furore that went on, when was it, 8 years ago, when whatever he protests now, he was definitely not accepting. Donald Trump was not accepting the vote then that brought in the geriatric Biden. He was not accepting that. And, the people that turned up to storm the, where did he storm? I can't remember. Was it
Capitol?
The Capitol. They stormed the Capitol.
Yeah,
I mean, basically, I don't think you'll find any direct evidence he was saying, come on, guys, let's storm the Capitol and have a revolution, a bit like 1789 in France.
He said that you need to...
that, but he certainly wasn't saying, oh, stop, don't do this.
No, he kind of did. In the speech, he said you have to protest in a orderly fashion, but just make your voices heard. And then this is where the deceptive editing from Newsnight and from the other BBC stuff came, because they stuck together 2 bits that were done. They were talked 2 hours difference. And then as soon as stuff began happening, and there were a lot of FBI, plainclothes disruptors and agitators and stuff. So when he saw what was going on, he just went to X and said, no, stop doing what you're doing and everything. No one remembers that, because Twitter, as it was called back then, kind of blocked his account. So there is a lot of stuff that happened on January 6th. And that is it's been proven that actually
that's down to the Americans as citizens of the United Kingdom. I am actually quite horrified that we have a prime minister who's stopping elections.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I don't know,
what's
folks.
worse is that In the case of some, they've stopped the election for the second year running.
Yep.
And councillors that are elected to serve 4 years are now looking like serving 6. It's not what the public said. The public said, we're electing you for 4 years. It should be the fact that they're not councillors anymore, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think that at this point, the only thing I'm thinking is that they want to stop whatever is happening at the local level, because they're under the assumption, say, so if the election had been held last year, you would have had in most times you would have a reform majority, or you will have Labour lose a lot of councillors, and this will obviously complicate a lot the selection of the candidates for the general elections, which may happen in 2029, but actually may happen earlier, because nowadays I'm not sure if Polymarket is accepting bets on that. But if I were a betting man, which I'm not, I would probably bet a lot of money that their election is going to be way earlier than 2029, because the way things are going, if Ed Miliband is allowed to keep destroying the economy like that, I don't think they will get to 2029. And
I disagree. I think they will hang on by their fingernails to the last minute, because they're not interested in the citizens of the United Kingdom. They've proved that over and over again. They're trying to treat us as serfs, and The Road to Serfdom is a book that I believe Margaret Thatcher used to carry around in her handbag. We've been on this for the whole of my lifetime, and that I've been actively political for the last 40 years. It's just more and more repression. Freedom of speech has gone out the window. I actually have got some good news, is that I received a cheque from my bank that debanked me along with Nigel Farage. I got a cheque in compensation from them after 3 years.
Wow.
Half a million people have been debanked by British banks. 500,000. And it's still going on, and it's accelerating. And the British government are passing more and more and more intrusive legislation. I'm actively involved with the finance team on the party, and literally I was trying to access one of our accounts. Literally, I had to go on. I had to show my driving license. I had to come up with a facial recognition that it was me. I had to prove, and I'm just an officer of the finance team, but that was the only way I could access the team. And also, Martin and the indubitable Marco have actually had to take over from me from dealing with the Electoral Commission, because I would have appeared in the newspapers trying to throttle somebody. Literally, our big issue at the moment, and they've been consistently trying to, over 20 years, close us down. They've tried every trick in the book. One of our former IT, who's now sadly died, he actually proved that they were making up emails and actually post-dating them. I said, how can you post-date in email? He said, yes, you can. And he actually sent me the copy of the program where you can do that. I haven't used it, I have to say. But our latest battle with the Electoral Commission after the last 6 months, and President Millet, as a good libertarian, has taken an interest. I was only speaking to his office last Wednesday. Is the symbol for his revolution, libertarian revolution in Argentina, was the chainsaw. You can see him swinging it around all over the place. He presented Musk with one, but Musk's was chrome-plated. We decided as a party and the executive to adopt a new logo 6 months ago, I think I'm right in saying, Martin, and we've submitted it, and they've come up with objection after objection. The latest one that Marco has been dealing with is a chainsaw is a weapon. We're not very happy about you having a weapon symbol.
Really? So lumberjacks now are military. So if you're a lumberjack and you're going to fell down the tree, you're military.
And you Google. I mean, this is why I'm so opposed to quangos running our lives. And Martin knows that I was having a nervous breakdown, and my wife always knew when I've been on the phone to the Electoral Commission, who always sign off their emails. He, she, it is. We get all this woke rubbish, and she could hear me shouting in my office at this guy. I mean, literally, I had to stand down before I just got on a plane to London and actually resolve the issue personally and got into the papers. It's just unbelievable. Anyway, I did with the chainsaw issue, and this is just the lunacy that we're dealing and wasting our time with. We've now been told we will get a decision on whether we're going to allow you to have a weapon as your symbol, the griffin and the chainsaw. Well, why do you want a chainsaw? We want a chainsaw because it's an international symbol of libertarianism. It's because President Milei has been successful in slashing the state. And that is the reason why we're adopting it. Oh, I don't think the board will approve this. The board of the Electoral Commission is made up of nominees from the Labour Party, from the Conservative Party, and the Liberal Democrats.
There you go.
Nominees, not elected, nominees.
Yeah, of course.
So, do we think we're going to get that approved? No, I don't. And that's the reason why earlier this morning I sent an email to Milei's advisors, including the guy Ivan, who came up with this concept a few years back, and I said, I think we're going to need you to actually do a bit of an international embarrassment on this.
That would be
anyway, this is the last bit I'm actually going to wither on about this chainsaw thing. Google is a chainsaw a weapon, and literally the street of it, the chainsaw is the most useless weapon you could ever wish to meet. You're more likely to injure yourself than an opponent.
Yeah, absolutely. Martin, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on one of the comments that's come across from Inderjeet, who said, were we aware that the HMRC now have the power to go straight into bank accounts? And yes, we are aware.
Yes, we are.
I believe it's come from the online safety bill.
No.
Snuck in under the cover of something else. It's basically a snooper's charter. And I can actually say that a friend of mine has had an incident where the DWP had gone into her bank account and said, we'd like to know the source of the payments into your bank account from a Mr. X. We can see our benefits going in, but who's this Mr. I'll call him Mr. X. And it was horrifying that they just had a dabble, had a look.
Can I just interject on that point? This is quite old. The people, the government that actually brought this in is quite old now. Who was our Chancellor of the Exchequer who liked a bit of the old white stuff up his nose? He was the one who introduced
George Osborne.
He is the very fellow. He introduced this, and Parliament was forced to pass something that they gave the power to the HMRC to actually go into your bank account, and they can lift every last penny. The only amendment that Parliament actually forced through against their masters from the HRMC was they had to leave a minimum of £5,000 in there. Anything above £5,000, they can just help themselves. So it goes right back to George Osborne, and he was what? He was a Tory. He wasn't a socialist. Well, he was really, but literally, it's the application of power by the state. And by the state, I mean the permanent civil service. Now, that is the reason why we've adopted the chainsaw, is because quangos need to go on day one. If we were ever elected or we had any influence over anybody, they must go. they must be terminated, and then do a melee and just go through one department after another, including the basically corrupt Department for Overseas Development, which is a bribery factory for foreigners. Literally billions and billions and billions are just lost.
The whole international humanitarian aid thing is being proven to be a scam, as it's the way to just extract money from the poor of the wealthy country to just transfer it to the wealthy in the poor countries. And this is exactly, it's just, I don't know, kind of like, there was this thing of the red aid back in the 70s, when you had terrorists in one country, red communist terrorists in one country, they would be helped by people from another one, intellectuals mostly. And if you're thinking that the government will not get into your bank account, allow me to just recount the experience as an Italian back in 1992, when the lira was under attack, and the British pound as well. The head of government, Giuliano Amato, just decided to get into every bank account in Italy and take 5,000 of the money that was there. And he was just saying, it's an emergency to sustain the lira, you will get your money back. So now it's 2026, we haven't received our money back, the money is gone. Poof, evaporated. And you think, oh no, that won't happen in Britain. Well, think again, it will. Sooner or later, it will.
I have moved everything that I've got out of fiat banking, which is all made up electronic money. Government has no money of its own. It either borrows it from the city, or it prints money, or it steals it from the taxpayer. And there is no financial controls. I wouldn't trust these people in the Treasury with their imaginary economist. I can't even bring myself to say her name at the moment. She's lied about her qualifications. There are other ministers who call themselves doctor, who have never been near a university. We get the government we deserve, and that is the reason why mass protests and actually shutting down Whitehall. And the only way I could see of doing that is what a friend of mine used to write. He's sadly now passed on. He said, starve the beast, tax strikes.
Yeah, I think it's, this is exactly what happened in India. Obviously brings a lot of bad memories, but with Mahatma Gandhi, the whole salt marches and stuff, it was a tax strike. It was saying, well, the British Empire, the Raj is taxing us with salt. Salt is needed to leave. We will go produce our own salt. We will not pay the tax. And everybody was saying, oh, it's just a demonstration and stuff. No, it was a tax strike. And considering it was very effective, the reaction was pretty brutal. And, you don't want people to get the wrong message. The wrong message is when you stop complying, the government has no way to do that. Aside, if they don't do something like they're doing in Iran, because the Pasdaran are refusing to shoot their own people, so they're bringing mercenaries in from Iraq. They will do the killing for them. But this is what happens when a government is on its last leg. So I don't know, gentlemen. It's been a really interesting conversation. Really great stuff. I don't know if we have the time to just talk about something else. Is there any kind of communication that we can give our audience in terms of saying what is the next events of the Libertarian Party? If there is any campaign that is running at the moment, how can they get in touch? How can they participate? Because obviously, one of the things that people say, we all like to talk about big issues and world-changing events and stuff. But I think that probably the way to change is not really pontificating as we are doing between ourselves with people on the internet, but probably it's just tackling very real issues. Because if you go in your local village, in your town, in your council and stuff, and you say, well, things are not going well, and you solve real issues, that is the way to gather, I don't know, kind of like appeal with people. So if, I don't know, just get involved, do something, just have a conversation, meet at the pub. I don't know. So anyone to say, Owen, anything to report?
I'd just say start paying attention. Once you start connecting, not connecting dots sounds sort of conspiratorial, but if you start applying certain principles that you might have read about to interactions that you have with any part of the public sector, you'll start realizing that, oh, wait, they're not very efficient, they're not smart as people, and it needs rolling back, and then you'll see just how extensive the rot is, because we talked earlier about how councils should be more representative of the people who are actually in that constituency, but it's deeper than that, because central government has effectively mandated quite a lot of what their spending has to go towards. So I would say, the long story short, start paying attention and you'll get there eventually.
Lovely. So, Martin, anything to report? Anything people should be doing? How to get involved? Stuff?
Yes, we have. We welcome the increase in followers, which has been quite substantial since the COVID lockdown. But what I say to everybody out there is, join us. Come and join us. It's $27.50 for a full membership, or $17.50 for concessions. But every one of you that joins, you are giving us the opportunity to stand candidates in wards, in the local elections, in constituencies, in the national elections, and that is how we're going to get noticed the most.
Okay, lovely. So, Andrew, last words and stuff. So, the whole protest about April, which I believe is also one of the reasons why the Dutch activist Eva Vladigerburg was having her ETA revoked recently, which is, in my book, is a massive own goal from the Labour government. But so, is the event still on? Would it be just digital ID, or would it be something else? Because I agree with you in saying that people on the streets are the most visible and effective way to just make the government and the quangocracy notice that things are not going well. But we can't actually leave the streets to Tommy Robinson and stuff, because otherwise it would be very easy for the BBC and stuff to go there and say, look, people on the street, they're racist, they're stuff. But if regular people show up, they can't be saying that. So, anything coming?
Yeah, we will have to revisit this thing about the digital ID, but I think it's only just slowed down because I'm sure that most of you know what the Fabian movement is, which runs the Labour Party. They've got plenty of time. They've just been meandering along for the last 100 years in actually turning us into a semi-communist state. I'm just going to underline what Martin has just said. We need money. It's as simple as that. At the end of the day, a lot of people are going to be very disappointed with Farage, because I think the changing culture and the Islamist threat, which I've travelled the world and I've worked the world. I get on well with everybody. I always make an attempt to speak the language I'm working in. But at the end of the day, literally, I was filled with horror with what's happened in the West Midlands. That chief constable has now been allowed to retire on a full pension after concocting fraudulent evidence for a parliamentary committee, and he lied to that committee, and there is no comeback on him at all. So what I'm saying is what Martin is saying is, you need to join us. We need to raise substantial amounts of money. I'm absolutely convinced that probably 90% of the people living in Britain still believe we live in a free society, yet the evidence on a daily basis is that this is being undermined. We need more members, we need more money, and more importantly, we need activists from the younger section like Owen, who have joined us and are taking a significant role. People like myself, I'm about to hit 70 this year. I've been banging on about this for over 25 years. I was one of the original founder members of the party, going back into 20 years ago. literally, I have to keep stepping back. I've been trying to retire from the party, and as I said, I tried to get sacked from the party only this morning to join Farage, but I was turned down by everybody. We need young, vibrant people like Martin, who's a mere 60.
Oh boy! So yeah, I remember that because actually we crossed paths in the past. Because back in 2011/2012, I was a member. Actually, I was the spokesperson of the Italian Tea Party, and I spoke in America. I did some kind of thing. I think we crossed paths sooner or later in terms of the attempt to build an international movement out of the Tea Party. We all know how that ended up, but libertarians are still here, they're still around. And so actually,
if I can tell you, 10 years ago, I had daily invites from the BBC. It got to the point when I was living just outside of Bristol that they had to arrange for me to go into White Ladies Road Studios and patch me through to the studios in London. Then all of a sudden, it stopped. It stopped. It was... That was it.
Surprise!
We people like you journalists, we get no reporting. Our press releases go unreported. They don't like what's going on in Argentina. The BBC will not report what's going on in Argentina because it underlines their quango status. Because literally, they're all trying to live off our taxes, and literally, it's a fraud. What's going on? If you do not pay your TV license. I mean, it's the most efficient tax strike that is going on at the moment. People are just not renewing their licenses. And literally, there is a funding crisis in the BBC, so they're now going to do it through direct taxation.
Hold on, there is another thing coming. I think they just signed an agreement with YouTube, the platform we're on at the moment, in order to say, okay, we'll shut down the iPlayer because apparently not many people are using it, or maybe it's too expensive to run. I can do that because I was running a OTT platform, and I know how expensive it can be. And so they're now saying, okay, now the live programming will be available on YouTube, which means that if you're using YouTube, you will have to pay a license fee. You heard it here first. Don't think they're not going to do it. They're desperate. They want money. And obviously, they're not going to report that Argentina yesterday decided that they're going to stop any kind of customs into the sale of smartphones. So smartphones in Argentina have lowered in price 30% with the stroke of a pen because government of Javier Milei decided that it was the right thing to do. And I'm sure people are so desperate about having to pay 30% less for their phone. And then the milk production has hit the maximum for 20 years. And they were saying libertarians were going to starve the population. They're against the poor. And obviously it's falling down. That's why they're not talking about Argentina. It's a complete mess for them. So thanks all for being here. Thanks all for participating in this 7th episode of our podcast. We are doing our best to keep having conversations like this every Saturday at this time. It's not easy. We're trying to have guests. We'll have guests coming. But the best thing you can do is just join the Facebook page of the Libertarian Party, follow the X account of the Libertarian Party, provided it's still operational in Britain, because if Keir Starmer has its way, you will soon need a VPN to access
children.
Of course, protect the children, and now they will come up with some other excuse. And follow the YouTube channel of the Libertarian Party, because on top of this podcast, we could have other kind of content coming in, maybe something more current. Obviously, we will be able to do a lot more if there were more members, if there were more activists, if we had more fundraising avenues. So if you can, join the Libertarian Party. So thanks all.
Can I just
Absolutely.
before I was going to say something else, but because I'm old, I've completely forgotten what it was. No, it's gone.
Okay, cool. No problem at all. So thanks, Andrew Withers, chairman for the time being of the Libertarian Party, provided he doesn't manage to get fired. Hi, Andrew.
Nigel doesn't want me.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll try to get in touch with him and have him change your mind. You will be a marvelous addition to the Reform UK party. So thanks, Owen. Thanks, Owen, for being here. Again, thanks for your contributions and stuff.
No, thank you guys. It's been interesting.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, thanks to you, and most of all, thanks to the people who followed us today. We've had some comments, we have some stuff. We're very happy to have that. Obviously, the whole point of this podcast is not just for us to just hear the sound of our voices. We're very good at that, but obviously it's not particularly productive. So if you join us, if you just ask questions, if you participate, it's going to be a lot more interesting. The best thing you can do, as I said, follow the X account of the Libertarian Party UK. Get membership if you can, if you want, if you're able, if you have some time to just do some basic activism and stuff. This is the best way to change things in the United Kingdom. And we'll see you again next Saturday for episode 8. And obviously, thanks all. I hope you have a marvelous weekend, and goodbye.